Good evening. How is everyone? Good to be with you again. Welcome to episode 25 of the slowest YouTube show on the planet. If you're new here, this is a place where we take calls for the next couple hours. We'll be doing that. Historically, this has been a 3-hour stream. We're testing out a 2-hour version of it right now to see how that feels. So bear with us as we kind of continue to feel out the best way to present all of this. Always happy to see some people in here. Been having a lot of fun with taking calls late at night and making pranks during the day. So it's been a good time. You guys know the jig by this point. We open up the lines here. We got a 1-800 number where you can call toll free. And lines are opening now. And we're just going to get straight into it tonight. So get your phones ready. The new phone system does take a little bit longer to navigate through. If you're new here, please listen to the phone instructions. Hit 1 when you call. And just take a second to listen to the instructions so you don't get toasted. We try to respect the fact that people are calling in here each night with stuff they don't feel they can talk about anywhere else. And we give them anonymity here so that they can bring up anything they want to that they're going through. So it might seem counterintuitive to take some time to hear the phone prompts on the phone menu, but because some of you I know just want to call and get in, but please do take that time. It'll serve you in the long run if you really want to connect here with the chat and me to listen to those prompts. Everybody feeling all right tonight? I personally am a little bit tired. Didn't get much sleep last night, but feeling good. I'm inexhaustible. That's the word I use to describe myself to my friends. It usually gets a laugh because it's true. I'm inexhaustible. Phone lines are opening. Yeah, I hear you, Mark A. I'm the same way. That is well said. It's like a curse. Once you start not sleeping, you just get used to it. Thank you, Skadger, for that super chat. Okay, lines are open. We're taking our first caller. Hi, thanks for calling.
Hey.
Hi. What you want to talk about?
Oh, general life stuff. And I'll jump straight into it. I'm a liar. I lie a lot. And I feel like I live a double life because of it.
Okay. Interesting. What do you think it is you're avoiding by lying?
Yeah, I've been trying to figure that out. Truth be told, I don't know. I don't know what's so scary about the truth, but it's certainly more comfortable to live in the lie. People admire you more when they think that you've done stuff with your life. So it's easier to say that you have.
Mm-hmm. So what kinds of things are you lying about currently? And maybe historically?
Historically? Well, historically, I've lied about my career a lot. I mean, I work a pretty simplistic construction job, and I've told my family that I work for this big corporation, when in truth it's like 4 guys. And part of that is because my family does do stuff that is pretty successful, so I feel the need to be successful with them. But
I
I don't know.
see. So maybe it's some inferiority. Like you feel like if you don't say
Yeah,
that you're involved with the right things, maybe you won't fit in with your family. Could it be something like that?
part of that. But then I also get confused when I consider the fact that my family's pretty accepting, and I know that they would be happy if I was working a regular job. I think I just need to feel like I'm successful, and I'm not.
So do you lie about your income? Do you lie about you mentioned you lie about
Now it's just about the mostly about my position. You know, and it's a weird addictive thing because like, and I was a project manager for a little bit, but it was like a month, and then I got too stressed to actually fulfill the role, and because of that, I quit. But everybody in my family, and I come from a big family, like 7 brothers or sisters,
wow.
and I tell them all that I'm still a project manager when I'm working hourly. And
Yeah.
as I look back on my life, I've done that a lot, like all through my life.
How deep in
And
are you? Go ahead, sorry.
I don't understand why I do it, but I do it a lot. Usually, and it's weird because it happens even on the little things, like I'll lie about what I eat for breakfast to make it more exciting, or even just different than reality. And I don't know why I do that, but yeah.
Right. Is it some sort of sense of competition in your family? Like you mentioned, you come from a large family. It makes me wonder what your birth order is, and whether you may feel
I'm getting
you're the youngest.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Could it be that you feel it's the only way to stand out, and maybe you feel like you're competing with your siblings, or is it something that feels like does it feel like an ego thing? I mean, it could be both of those. Do you feel um, how do you feel about yourself? I guess that's 3 separate questions, but we can take them one at a time. That's just what comes to my head when you say
What's the
that.
first one? What's the first question?
Uh, could it be some sense of competition with your siblings? Like you feel like it's your only comparative advantage to um, fluff up your credentials or your job descriptions in order to have a place of value in your own family.
Mm, there's certainly an element of that. I think that I feel more valued when I seem successful, but the weird thing is that I know that my family would value me regardless, but I think I want them to value me because I am successful.
Okay, so that brings us to the next question, which was, could it be some, um, you know, psychological thing where could it be your ego or your id uh, trying to fluff itself up?
So it's interesting about that because I have pretty low self worth,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm not entirely familiar with the id, but I have pretty low self worth. So part of it is I like to pretend like I'm better than I am,
Interesting. Yeah,
I guess.
the id is.
Could be
Go ahead.
entirely.
I see. Yeah, the id is what most people uh, mislabel as the ego. The ego, when people say, "Oh, this person has a big ego," it's actually, when someone says that, they're actually talking about the id. The id is what people mean when they say someone has a big ego. The ego is actually a very mammalian part of your brain. It's a very mammalian response to your brain. The ego is actually a part of reason. The id is kind of the shadow part of your. It's like you could call it your reptilian tendencies. That's what the id is. A lot of people mislabel their ego for their id, because I don't know why that is, but I've just noticed that the id is what actually people are saying when they say someone has a big ego. But it's interesting you're going in here and you talk about this, because a lot of people with a big id are really hard on themselves and have a low sense of self-worth, which is what you're saying. And it makes me wonder if somehow your id has taken control of your reason, of your existence, of your drive. And if that's true, that's an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I don't know, man. So, it certainly got me into some situations. Like right now, I've lied about the amount of work that I've done, and to fill that, I've recently purchased an LLC. Because I've already set up this like facade of me being this big time contractor with my family, and one of my family members is coming into town, and so I took this framing job off of an LLC that I recently bought, and I'm trying to basically make it look like I've had a business this whole time, even though I haven't.
There's no judgment here. Don't hold back.
It's interesting that I get myself into these situations. And truth be told, if history would repeat itself, then I'll end up framing this house and getting it to such an extent to where I can continue the facade while my family member is here. And then he'll leave and life will continue.
Right. Deanna Krebs from the chat, one of our mods, asks a good question. She's wondering what success means to you.
Oh, that's a good question. It's a mixture of competency and consistency.
Right.
And I do think there's a difference, because you can be competent, able to do something, but not be able to do it replicably. And I think successful people, when I look on people I know that are successful, they're competent, able to do a task, and they do it consistently. And I'm just not that. I have so many ups and downs, and I question so many things. I consider myself to be a skeptic, and part of one of the issues in that is I don't really see very many things as being factual, or not necessarily factual. That's not accurate. I don't see things as being constant, and so it's hard for me to be consistent in that when I'm it goes to oh, I should put this nail in, but how do I know that this hammer will hold up to the blow? Well, how do I know that I'm holding the hammer? Well, how do I know that I have hands? Well, how do I know that God exists? It goes into a big spiral with my skepticism. I'm just so many things are tangled up. And then the easier thing is just to build a facade, because the facade makes more sense.
I wonder if there's something to that. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying that the facade is cleaner. It's neater. It's tidier than the reality that I live in.
Right. Yeah, you just hit what I was about to hit myself. I was going to ask about, you mentioned you've become kind of a skeptical person, skeptical thinker. Makes me wonder if there's some voice in your head saying that uh, we can't really truly empirically prove anything. And so what is
Yeah.
truth? And what difference does it make if I fabricate things to people I love? Or
Yeah.
is that it? Is that what it feels like?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a part of it. A year ago now, maybe less than a year ago, I work as a hourly. It's so weird saying this in full truth for the first time, honestly, to someone. But I work as an hourly shop worker slash I go to the field sometimes. Um, but I mostly work in a shop, and I recently convinced my boss to buy these measurement devices because we're doing stuff within a couple thous of measurement, and there are these rubies that you have to set the measurement between the two, but they're only good for two measurements because the rubies will actually stretch and shrink. And it came to my attention about a year ago that if we can't even know what a millimeter is, how do we know anything? Like, it's all subjective to the heat and cold of a shop. Like, nothing's consistent, even up to the measurement of a millimeter. So how do we even know that anything is anything? And
Well, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
oof.
Physics is ultimately applied
And so
math.
it's just easy
Um,
to like create this fictional world where I know that things are things
mhm.
because I said they were.
Right. Well, these things we're talking about are agreements people make. And these agreements that we make are things like millimeters and math and
Right.
Economics, dollars, money, law.
Yeah.
Uh, none of these things exist in nature. They're mental concepts, people that make sense universally, that help people organize a life that keeps us from living in the wilderness on our own. These agreements help strangers work together and collaborate and build civilizations. And if you are breaking those agreements by being dishonest with the people you love, then, there was somebody in the chat said this earlier. I want to make sure I'm not to be very clear, like you've called in here tonight, and I want you to know this is a safe place, but this is a place where we ask questions because we want to help people like you processing things like this to really get to the bottom of some things. So I'm going to ask some poignant questions. It's not to be rude, but somebody in the chat, go ahead. Sorry. What were you saying?
Oh, nothing. I was just saying, go for it.
I appreciate the spirit. Somebody in the chat said earlier that I can't find the comment now. I can't attribute this to the right person, but somebody said that they bullshit their way through life for so many years, and it took them a long time to realize that they were only lying to themselves. And I thought that was an interesting sentiment. It was an interesting thought. But it's also, there's more to it. Like, you're ultimately lying to yourself. But you're also, to get to the other point we were just talking about, you're also breaking agreements by lying about these things. Agreements on the very things that make up community and civilizations, society. If we can't be honest, then there is no trust. And trust is really all we have. If we're not foragers, if we're not hunter-gatherers, trust is really all we have. That's why we call money trust. It's a form of trust. It says, "In God we trust" on the back of our money, for that reason, and that's why we call people in control. We have words like trustee and things like this, for money, value, because they're not real, but we're all trusting. We're all agreeing that these things make community possible in a much grander way than would be possible if we were just wandering the wilderness and foraging for ourselves only. So it's like this collaborative kind of picture we're talking about honesty and truth and trust. It's interesting. I mean, it's a conundrum because you're the youngest in a family of 7. You may feel, it sounds like you may feel like it's the only way to get validation from your family is to fluff these things a little bit. And I just talked for a bit, so I'm wondering where your head's at when I'm saying things like that.
Yeah, I think I definitely seek for validation from my family. I definitely want them to like me. It's interesting to me. I guess one of the things that like stood out in what you were saying is you had mentioned that you're ultimately lying to yourself. I've never understood that sentiment. Like, it's supposed to like convict you, quote unquote, that like you're lying to yourself, but I've never understood that because I've been conscious of every lie that I've made, and I've known that it's not the truth. It's not like I'm oblivious to the fact that I'm lying. I just know that the individual that I'm lying to would prefer the reality that I'm presenting.
Right.
And that makes it better. I guess maybe to help you understand, I come from a background that's fairly Christian, and with that comes a whole slew of different thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also a Christian that doesn't necessarily agree with Christianity. I think that the Bible provides a good framework to live life, but I don't see any evidence for God. And so with that, and the only reason I'm telling you this, I'm not trying to get you into a debate about God's existence by any means, but it creates an interesting thing when if there's no moral constant, then what's the point in not telling a lie for my own benefit?
It's
and
a
if
great
I
question.
only see my family on Christmas and the occasional, random visit, then it makes me feel better to lie. Mm-hmm. So why not do it?
Well, there's a lot there. The first thing I would address would be to say that, you mentioned there is no evidence for God, which is a common point many people bring up when they're wrestling with their faith. And the thought I usually go to when I hear that question is that there's a reason it's called faith and not science or knowledge or information. There's a reason it's called a leap of faith. Your trust. It's trust. It's that trust thing again. And there's also a reason that religion is at the bedrock of all of these agreements that we're talking about, like money, math, trust, law. What lies at the bedrock of all of these agreements? It's religion. Ultimately, it's faith. And this is all a form of trust. We trust. Those who have faith trust in something that they cannot empirically prove. It's the same thing with money. It's the same thing with law. It's the same thing with any agreement we make in order to make it possible for a society to function. Like society, I think a lot of people take that part for granted and they get lost. I think a lot of people get lost because they take for granted civilization. Like, civilization is a wild experiment that is very new in the grand scheme of things. Very new. And yet so many people take it for granted that this thing works. It's worked for millennia, but it's still only been here a blink of an eye from what we know about how long people have been here. So I would first say that it's in my experience, it's normal to hear stories from people who get lost by these kinds of questions because and I'm kind of hearing some of this in your voice, in your words, that it sounds like maybe you could be forsaking the value of civilization and what the alternatives would be. Like if we follow this logic that we can't prove anything, if we follow this logic that trust is worthless and that lies are just as valuable as the truth, if we follow that, where does that get us? If everybody lived that way, where does that get us? That gets us in a world where people can't trust each other anymore, and so they can't trade. If you can't trust someone, you can't trade. Trade is what makes this whole machine go round every day. And we're seeing trade be disrupted by a lack of trust globally right now. I mean, the supply chains, and it's got a lot of heat on it because of trust and how that impacts things like trade. And there's also very practical things like labor shortages and pandemics and things like this that impact the supply chain. I don't mean to make it all about trust, but it's definitely about trust. I mean, look at what's happening in Russia and Ukraine. I mean, there's definitely some trust stuff at play there. Trust is, there's a reason trust is everywhere in every society. There's a reason people depend on that word trust, because math is not nature. Math is not something that we are evolved. I mean, math is agreements people have made about this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4, and we can trade based on math. And people agree that these concepts have value, even though they're not natural. Civilization's not natural. It's a wild experiment. And the truth and trust is what holds it all together. It's the glue that holds it all together. If we can't trust the words of other people, and if we can't trust that we all agree on some baseline, then we have nothing.
Yeah. That's, which pushes me to a point of like, all right, how do I get out of these lies?
Mm-hmm.
God, I would lose so many relationships. I don't know that I could get out.
I believe there's always a way.
Moving.
I believe there's always a way.
Moving job,
Yeah.
and that would be a justification, and then just start over.
Mm-hmm.
Because then I could tell people, well, moving and getting a new job, and then I could just start telling the truth.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're talking to someone who believes there's a way to put anything to anyone in a way that makes sense and brings people closer together. There are ways to communicate that can convey any situation, any idea, this is not just my idea. This is the reason that creative agencies exist that serve things like advertising and news and what goes on the front of a cereal box. You're talking about effective communication. There's a reason that agencies all around the world specialize in this thing, and that there are so many books written about effective communication. And, you're talking to someone that's worked in this industry for a long time. And so you're very much talking to someone that believes there's a way to put anything to anyone in a way that is vulnerable and makes sense. And of course, yeah, it's arguable that some of these agencies use this as a form of manipulation, and that like maybe certain things shouldn't be on the front of cereal boxes, and maybe certain things shouldn't be on the news, and maybe certain things shouldn't be advertised in the ways that they are. That's definitely a valid point. But to forsake the truth of what effective communication is would be to throw baby out with the bathwater. It doesn't make it not true. It doesn't make it not valuable just because some people will exploit it. So, I'm trying to encourage you that there's always a way out. Even if you feel you've built, even if you feel like you've built like this house of cards around you that, like, as soon as you pull the card at the bottom out, the whole thing's going to come tumbling down. There may be some people that don't understand. There may be some people that need some time to process the new information you give them. But I do believe that if you're tactful with how you go about these conversations, with revealing the truth to some of these people that you've been dishonest with, I believe if you conduct yourself in a certain manner, if you come at those conversations from a place of respect and also vulnerability. In other words, kind of like fully acknowledging to the people how this looks, and fully acknowledging to these parties that these lies came from a place of insecurity in yourself. Be that vulnerable is what I would say. If you're really that worried about it, really go to, like, show them your neck. Is like not physically literally, but like, like when someone's being knighted by a king, there's a reason then they bow. There's a reason bowing is a thing. There's a reason these things are things. It's just a sign of, hey, my life is in your hand. I'm exposing my neck. You're going to place a sword on my shoulders. You could cut my head off. I trust you. There's that trust thing again. That's what knighting is. You're trusting that the person who has the sword and is placing it on your shoulders is not going to cut it off. Bowing is a sign of vulnerability, and it's powerful. Vulnerability is very powerful. That's what we're doing here. We're trying to create a place where people can call in and feel safe being vulnerable, and talking about things like you're using this place in a beautiful way, I would say. And I think if you could find words that would satisfy this issue, where you're telling them the same stuff you're telling us here. You might not be able to use the same exact words as you use here because you have anonymity here. But I believe that if you come at it from a place of vulnerability and just owning it, being like, look, like, I don't know why I've done this. In fact, I do know why I've done this. I've done it from a place of insecurity or whatever you think it is. It sounds like maybe there's some insecurity at play, maybe some sense of competition, and that you're not good enough. You mentioned you don't really like yourself that much. I would say be honest about all of that all at once in those conversations. And that's that act of being vulnerable and giving the person kind of permission, like showing them your neck. That's what I meant by that. Giving them permission to judge you, and just like, but you're being totally honest. You're being like, look, I don't agree with the way I've conducted myself. I got lost, and I want to course correct, and I want to be closer with my family. Or I'm not putting words in your mouth. You're going to find different words. But, the point is just showing vulnerability. If you give people that opportunity, it's really powerful when you just come clean and give people the very opportunity you're afraid of. Give them the opportunity to excommunicate you from their life. Give them that chance.
That sounds terrifying.
Yeah.
I'm literally shaking just thinking about it. Because I know, like, there would be people that excommunicate me and wouldn't talk to me for at minimum a year. And they would have every right to, because I've betrayed their trust. But it's not going to get any better if I don't.
Would you say it's good now?
I think it is. But I know it's not.
Right. I'm not trying to freak you out. I want to be very careful. You mentioned you're shaking. I want to be very careful. I don't want you to toast me here. I don't want you to toast me.
Yeah.
I'm trying to tell you what I'm hearing, and to
Yeah.
tell
It's accurate.
what's that?
What you're saying is accurate. It's just, it's a terrifying thought to think that, some of the people in my life include, like, my mom. I'm from a single parent home, and she's the only parent that I've had. And if she knew that I lied to her about some of the things that I've lied about, I don't know that she would speak to me for a very long time before she could forgive me, if she ever forgives me. And yeah,
That may happen. That may happen with some people. But
what do you do in the meantime? I mean,
the
I
best,
don't know that
go ahead, sorry.
I don't know that I could survive the meantime between when the people that will be hurt from the truth to when they forgive me and come back into my life. I don't know that I could survive the waiting period.
Well, if you are now, what I'm going to say might raise a lot of different emotions, but I want you to hear what I'm trying to say. Like if you're strong enough to, like what you've done already takes like some level of, a large level of strength, I would say. Like I wouldn't call it, I'm not saying that lying to people is like a strength that people ought to be more dishonest with people, but to share the things that you've shared in the way that you have, and to maintain these relationships for so long the way that you have, that does take a certain amount of ability to withstand resistance. It takes some strength to live these lies the way that you have. And my guess would be that it feels scary coming clean because you're exercising the other muscle. It's like one arm. You got two arms. It's like I'm seeing two arms. Like you've been using this arm, your right arm, the entire time, and you've been lying with it. And then you've got this other arm that you haven't exercised, and this is truth. And it's both the same muscle. And you've spent your time building up this muscle but they're both essentially doing the same thing. Like you're exchanging information. And that's the picture I'm seeing, is like it seems scary to you because you haven't exercised that muscle. And there may be some falling out. That's why I say the best thing you can do is to just be vulnerable and tell everybody exactly why. I'm making a suggestion here. I mean, this is just from what I'm hearing. I don't know you. All I can make is suggestions based on what I'm hearing. But if you come at it from a place of vulnerability and say, look, like I did these things because I didn't know any better. I did these things because I was afraid. I did these things because I didn't like myself. And I didn't trust that any of you would love the real me. And I wanted you to love me. If you start off with that, and then you tell them everything you've never told them before, there may be some people that don't understand for some time. But my bet would be that most of them will hear the vulnerability in that. Again, it's like showing your neck when you're being knighted. You're like, look, here's my neck.
Yeah. Guess the only thing left to do is to fuck up and do it.
How old are you? How long is this? How old are you, and how long have the lies been going on?
I'm 26, and I moved out of my house at 21. And I think I've been lying to at least my mother for 5 years. My brothers, the same amount, really. Some of them smaller lies than others, you know. I mean, I've got 2 brothers that I'm pretty well connected to. And because of that, the lies to them are bigger. And then there's some that are more distant, and the lies are smaller to them. I mean, my mother thinks that I run a company, essentially. And yeah.
Deanna Krebs from the chat says, if people can't forgive you for lying, are they people you want to keep lying to keep them in your life? Sounds like you wouldn't be able to mess up at all. That's an impossible standard to meet.
Yeah, but you only have one mother in life.
That's true.
I mean, I guess cost-benefit analysis. Is it worth telling the truth to lose the only mother that you ever have?
Well, do you have kids? It sounds like you don't.
No.
I'm going to tell you.
She's ready to get married.
There's nothing you can do.
Right.
There's nothing you could do to make your mom stop loving you. She might be confused. It might take her some time to get her head around it. She'll never stop loving you.
Mm-hmm.
More so than your siblings. Definitely.
Yeah, but it'll hurt.
It may hurt. It may. Again, that's why I say it's important to show your neck. Show them exactly where the vulnerability is. Show them exactly that you know it's on you.
I suppose that's what they call courage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Scadger from the chat says, you're her baby. That's right.
Well, I mean, do you do it in small doses, I guess? No? All at once?
Well,
loading it back on somebody that's not prepared.
What I might consider doing is it sounds like you've got a lot of work to do. I can tell why now you mentioned earlier you were shaking at the sound of some of this, because it sounds like your family's very big and you got go ahead.
Part of it is also that I'm thinking about getting married to this girl, and I've told her as few lies as I can possibly muster. There's a few that I would have to correct, and they're so stupid. Like, to give you an example of some of the lies, I told her I was 1 age older than I am, and it's such a stupid thing to lie about. I mean, it doesn't matter. And I think if I, think about it and count it, I think I've told her like 4 lies like that. And as I think about like setting up a family and setting up a relationship that I want to last, it's clear to me that it can't sustain itself on lies. And so I want to correct this so that I can have a sustainable future.
I want to highlight a couple things from the chat and then get back on your question of how do you even begin to peel back the layers here. Offcore from the chat says, maybe you can offer to answer any questions your family would have, truthfully. I'm sure they may have questions that will help them process it all. And then Deanna Krebs, following up on that, says to you, by opening up the conversation, like Off-Course suggests above, you can also focus on them and their feelings while opening up about yours. This is a sweet gesture that would be hard to turn down. I agree with those thoughts. I think those are spot on. And I also want to acknowledge that you're feeling overwhelmed, it sounds like, by all the explaining you have to do. It sounds like it's not just your mom. It's like you got 6 siblings to explain yourself to. My suggestion on that is just something to consider. I'm not telling you to do anything, but my suggestion from what I'm hearing would be maybe start with your mom, one-on-one. Get together with your mom, one-on-one, and let her be the first one you open up to, and do exactly, consider doing what we're talking about here by exposing your neck and saying, I don't know why I did these things. In fact, I do know why I did these things, and I don't want to do them anymore because I'm seeing now that these are not bringing us closer together, and that there is not value in being dishonest. And I'm desperate to get on track with everyone and for everyone to see what I really am, and apologize. Apologizing is hard for some people, but it can go a long way. I mean, vulnerability goes a lot further when it's followed up with some kind of remorse, or asking for forgiveness. So my suggestion would be maybe consider starting with your mom, and just have that be a one-on-one chat. And answer any questions she has. Stay as long as it takes. And then at the end of that conversation, I would say maybe a next step would be to have some kind of family meeting where, and this might be intense. But that's why I say start with your mom. Because if you can start with your mom, if you can get your mom's support, and then you have a family meeting, and then you've got your mom behind you, that conversation becomes a lot better immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess one of the things that I'm thinking about now is, like, I've been lying for so long, do I even know how to tell the truth to them? Which I guess part of that is just doing it.
Yeah, you haven't tried that muscle too much. You haven't exercised that muscle. Might be a weird learning curve. Might feel really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But again, to take it back to what is true in life, as you put it, we don't know God is true. And as I put it back to you, that's why we call it faith and not information or knowledge, which is so funny to me that, like, there's even any evidence needed to serve as bases for different religions. Why do different religions need any basis for what they think about their gods? Isn't that what faith is belief despite the evidence? That's why it's called faith and not science or knowledge or information. But at the same time, we also have faith in society working, and that's what we agree on every day when we agree that 1 equals 1 and 2 equals 2, and that laws are there for good reason.
We have evidence that society works.
Right. 100%.
And that's why we can continue to, quote unquote, believe in societies, because it continues to work. But we're getting into a different discussion here.
Right.
Which is
no, we're still agreeing.
God.
We're still agreeing. God's a different thing from civilization, of course. The idea of God is different from civilization. Yeah. But my point is that civilization is built on all of these trust factors, like applied math, like...
They're trust factors based on evidence. They're different.
Right. 100%.
Because we can observe an and prove them.
Right.
You know, we can't observe and prove God, which makes it this weird outlier that claims itself to be this moral constant that you can never prove.
Right. And it sounds to me like we're still agreeing. I'm not raising any objection to any of that.
Yeah.
You know, my point is that if I was just trying to bring it back to the thought again that if we can't be honest with each other, if we can't trust each other that we're being honest, then we have no civilization. We have no hope for community. And there is some trust intrinsic to that. We all trust each other that we're being honest. And so I think that it might be a little bit of a pill for some of your family to swallow. And you might have siblings, would be my guess, that might need some time to process this before they can continue being close. But I do believe time heals all wounds, and I do believe that you taking this step of vulnerability and honesty, just brutally honest, and just showing your neck and being like, look, I did this because I didn't like myself. I did this because I thought you guys wouldn't love me if you really knew who I was. And I want to believe that's a lie. I want to believe that's the biggest lie here, that I can't be real with you. And I'm coming clean, saying, look, like, I've not been sure how to be honest. And I'm turning over a new leaf. And I would be so humbled by your forgiveness. I'd be so grateful for your acceptance. And for you to not have your trust rocked in the future by me telling you this, because I'm trying to admit to you something that none of you knew before this, that I did not feel valuable in this family. And I didn't value myself. I mean, these are all things I'm not putting words in your mouth. These are all things you've told us here.
Yeah. No, that's accurate. And I think in a perfect world, that is what I would say. And I'm not trying to hold up your lines by any means, but my risk analysis brain goes to saying, you know, where's the detriment? Like, if I want to live a life that is more genuine, right, more truthful, more authentic, where's the harm in me, you know, starting anew and just telling truth from that point on? Not like they're going to remember the past.
My gut says that if you don't address it, then it will always plague you.
Right. It'll come up eventually. Then I'll have to start lying again. Right.
Yeah, we wouldn't want that.
No.
I mean, what you're talking about is really scary. I want to acknowledge that. What you're talking about is really scary. Being this honest is really scary. I get that.
It's quite terrifying being honest. You have to show all your insecurities. There's a lot of them. Some of them, if you start to question them in front of people, rock their world. Mm-hmm. And then the line gets muddy between truth and lie. And yeah.
There's a reason that relationship experts talk about the advantages of having a self-deprecating sense of humor. People love a self-deprecating sense of humor. Not to say that you actually need to hate yourself, but people who can crack jokes about things they do and be like, well, that was really dumb that I just did that. Like, that's a really endearing thing to hear someone say.
Yeah.
It's showing your neck.
Things I've done enough. All right. Well,
but I don't want to make you feel like I'm trying to talk you into doing anything. I mean, you called in sounding like, I mean, this is what you told us. I'm just echoing back what I've heard. You're trying to figure out how.
I definitely am. And I think I don't understand how telling the truth is going to improve my life. It doesn't seem like it's going to radically change it from what it is now, other than my family will see that I work a lower income job than they do and a lower successful job than they do. Um, and I don't have as much, I guess, responsibility as they do in my job. Um, and that will be acknowledged, but other than that, nothing else will change. Like, I still have the same money I have to pay my bills and still show up to the same family events, and I just don't, I guess, speaking on faith, I guess I'm taking it on faith that telling the truth will improve my life, because I don't see how it will. It doesn't seem much different than whatever reality I choose to present to someone.
Off court from the chat says to you, I guess start by being honest with yourself. It's all doing you no good mentally and with genuine connections. And that's exactly where I was going to go to another point on that about the way mammals hunt more game than reptiles. There's a reason mammals evolved and are better hunters than reptiles, even though reptiles eat their own mates and children when they're hungry. They don't even think about it. Mammals hunt more game. They're more successful. They're more. They're way more advanced in their cognitive functions because of community, because they value the perspectives of those in their pack. And humans are pack animals. Some people don't like to be called animals. I'm not calling you an animal, but my point is that you're how much more intelligent are you than a mammal? And of course we're all mammals, but my point is like a dog, for example. Like, dogs were one of the first great pack animal hunters because they learned to work together and communicate. That's why they hunt more game than reptiles. They'd eat their own mates and kids. You would think the reptiles would have the upper hand there, because they can feel no remorse about eating their own kids and mates. But it's not true. Mammals that are effective communicators are way better hunters, and they're way more prosperous and much more advanced. And how much more difficult is that for us as humans with prefrontal cortexes and the ability to actually reason and to form words, very precise communication. It's much harder for us than for wolves or for reptiles. But the point is that if we can't effectively communicate, then we're no better than reptiles. And reptiles don't work together. That's why you've never seen a pack of reptiles. And to the same point, it's the same reason you've never seen a civilization of mammals outside of humans.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm taking it back to that trust thing again. That's what a relationship is.
Right.
How are you feeling right now? I mean, I don't want to. You mentioned you were shaking earlier at the sound of having conversations like this with your family. I don't want to shake you up. I'm really glad you called in. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Oh, good. Glad it was really brief. I'm still shaking. That's a big thing in life to say that the last 5 years have been all a lie that I've told you, and I don't actually know the people that you think I know or have done the things that you think I've done. I've done some of them, but not all of them. It feels like it's going to be a shock to my family, and then comes in my head the question of, all right, if I'm going to be honest, to what degree am I honest with them? Do I tell them all of my thoughts? In which case, my thoughts will go to, well, I don't necessarily believe in God in the sense that you do. I believe it's possible he exists, but I don't see any evidence for him. And I don't see evidence for a singular God either. And then it's like, all right, that's going to create such a chasm that I can't talk to them ever.
Well, you
completely cut me off.
You may not need to be that honest. You may not need to be.
Right.
Religion's really hard to talk about. I mean, politics are hard to talk about. Many families have rules about discussing politics. So, religion and politics are hard to talk about.
I guess, to speak towards how I'm feeling, whenever I start to acknowledge the fact that religion is hard to talk about, it just makes me angry because I don't see why such an important thing that governs our way of thinking is hard to talk about.
I fully agree.
If we want this, we should be able to talk about it. Otherwise, we end up in situations like I'm in where I'm scared to talk about it because I'm going to lose my family.
I fully agree. I wish these things were easier to talk about. I believe they will become easier to talk about in time, but we're not in a time where it's easy to talk about. It's definitely easier to talk about than it was thousands of years ago. I mean, thousands of years ago, if you mentioned you believed in the wrong God, you might get your head cut off.
Famine, not scared of being burned at the stake.
Right. But again, like that I wouldn't call that dishonesty. Omitting or withholding your own perspective on religion or politics can be actually respectful. It's not that you have to. It's not that you're lying about that kind of stuff. If you can't have those kinds of conversations with different family members, you're just respecting that those topics aren't going to fly. You don't have to tell them you're like Mormon or something. If you're not, that would be lying. But you can kind of keep a healthy distance from conversations like that, and you're not lying by doing that. But if you are giving false information about yourself and things that you work on, and if these things are standing between your relationships, then that's much different, is what I'd say. You might not be able to be so honest about what you think about things like religion or politics. That might be best kept to yourself and to the friends that you trust the most.
That's well put. Well done.
There's a bunch of people in the chat begging you to join our Discord because they want to continue this conversation with you outside of the chat here. Are you in our Discord?
No, I'm not.
It's free. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Discord. It's totally free to join. There's a link in the video description. It's just it's our own tiny little Twitter, as I like to say. It's like a tiny little Twitter just for us.
Okay.
There's voice chat in there. People voice chat. People do text. People direct message. You can use it however you want. We have some rules about using it, but it's a great community.
Sure. Is that the one Jake Cooper put up?
That's right. You click that link, you'll find us.
Okay. Cool, man. Well, hey, I appreciate you talking through this with me. I think it's a great service you got going on here.
I appreciate you calling in and sharing the way you did. That took a lot of energy. You must be really zonked.
Yeah.
Go get some sleep.
Yeah, I'm pretty zonked. Pretty zonked.
Go get some rest and take care of yourself. And good luck as you plow forward with all this. And call back in again anytime. We would love to get a positive update.
Yeah, I will call back if I get a positive update.
Great.
I think the next step is, exercising that muscle. I like that analogy that you had of the two different muscles. Exercising that truth muscle, maybe in little ways with some of my friends that are less, the risk involved in telling them the truth and, spilling my guts, as it were, are
Right.
left with them, and so I can exercise that muscle and then take the big step towards my mom. I do think it's important. I like what you said about resolving it with mom first and then the rest of my family. That does seem like a very logical way to approach it.
Yeah, because you don't want to.
Yeah,
You don't
I
want to have
will put it into practice.
right. Because you don't want to have 7 different conversations with each person, and then
Yeah,
even if you do that successfully, the only thing people will do is to be like, "Hey, did brother call you and share all this stuff?" And then they're going to talk about it amongst themselves. So you might as well just have one sit down with your siblings after you've talked with your mom. You might as well just get them all together so you can just have that conversation. So there's complete transparency, no room for question. Like nobody saying, "What did he tell you?" "Well, he didn't tell me that. He told me this." And like maybe you can't disseminate the exact information exactly like you did with each sibling 6 times in a row. So like you don't want any room for speculation that you did tell some siblings certain things and not others. So getting everybody in the same room after you've got your mom's backing and forgiveness and support might be the best, the simplest and cleanest way to bring the family into this. That's the logic behind that.
right.
Yeah. Man, this is such a fascinating topic. I'm so glad you shared. Thank you for your candidness, for your honesty. I would say you're well on your way to exercising this muscle. You were just completely honest with us here, and yeah, it was anonymous. But the fact that you were able to do that, even in the guise of anonymity, shows that you're ready for this. I think that's awesome. Props to you for calling in and sharing. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
What a great conversation. Goodness. Okay, guys, lines are opening. Again, reminder, we're going to be going for 2 hours tonight, so we'll wrap up in around 50 minutes. Taking our next caller. Hi, thanks for calling.
Hi. So first off, I'd like to say that this is actually the second time that I'm calling in and actually getting through. The first time was about a month ago when I spoke about being really afraid to get married again.
Okay.
And that whole thing ended up going really well.
Great.
But
can you jog my memory before you give us the update? Can you jog my memory a little bit?
Oh yeah, so I was afraid because I had been in an abusive marriage prior, and I had suffered a lot of PTSD and CPTSD as a result of that first marriage, and I had a child out of that first marriage, and my now new husband is fantastic and amazing and completely understanding with my depression and anxiety and everything else. And I was worried that something would cause him to run away depending on my mental health.
Okay.
And I mean, the wedding went off without a hitch and it all went wonderfully.
Great. So you actually got married between our last call and today. Is that right?
Yeah. So the wedding was on April 30th.
Okay.
And
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, it was a wonderful, lovely ceremony. It was just I guess the reason I'm calling you right now is all the stuff that has happened since then. It's kind of not tied to the wedding directly, it's nothing with my husband. It's just things that are heavy on my mind from specific people that were at the wedding. That just kind of has been an ongoing thing for a month now.
Okay, so it sounds like this is partly a positive update, and then there's maybe some new stuff you want to process.
Yeah. I just I wanted to come on and, like I said, reference that, hey, yeah, this is the second time I'm calling because I love your show, I love what you do, and I really appreciate that you're doing this type of thing, and I just kind of feel like I could benefit, again, like I did very much the first time from having just that extra little assistance.
Okay. So first of all, I feel like since you called in with a positive update, we like to celebrate that, and we're going to give you some applause here because that's awesome.
Well, thank you.
That's literally a microphone we have in an auditorium with thousands of people in it clapping for you right now. That's literally what you're hearing. That was a joke, but this
My goodness.
wouldn't that be something?
Amazing.
It's just a little sound we do. It's a little fun ritual. We like to celebrate those things. So what else is there?
Well, I mean, so I guess one of the first things is we found out the week of the wedding that there was going to be a funeral happening at the same location, just in a different part of the venue on the same day, at the exact same time. And, I mean, I had discussed in my last call that the wedding was a pagan wedding. And so things were approached a little bit differently than they would be with, funerals versus weddings, Christian style. Just, based off of the whole gods that are present, that type of thing. And, the issue came up where one of the guests was attending the funeral, and because it was her neighbor, and it wasn't just a random guest like one of my friends or anything, it was actually my dad's girlfriend. And they've always been extremely open to talking about my belief system and everything, so I thought that because I spoke to my priest about it on the rehearsal day, and he mentioned that there was a small ritual she'd have to go through before entering the space to kind of cleanse off the negative energy, because the gods of marriage and death do not get along in my belief system and my faith system. And it was just a small little thing, and I thought that it would be okay. When I told my dad, because it was just easier to get in contact with him other than his girlfriend, and I knew that he would talk to her immediately about it when he was available to, he became enraged. And first of all, I felt terrible. And it caused me that night, because the rehearsal happened the day before the wedding, it caused me that night and the morning of to have terrible anxiety that caused physical symptoms, on the day of my actual wedding. And I was scared to even see his face, because I knew that he was still going to come, even though she wasn't going to show up, because she didn't want to do the small cleansing that would be needed to transfer from the funeral to the wedding grounds.
Right.
And it's just, that was probably one of the worst parts about that actual day of, because it was such a rupture, and my dad even left my wedding early because of it, but just it was such a rupture, and I've barely spoken with him a whole bunch since.
Sounds like this is a religion rub, he wasn't open to the honesty about your conflict with the funeral and the marriage, and the way you put that through your own faith lens, call it. Am I misunderstanding?
So the way that it was described to me, I had never I'm still relatively new to what I consider organized paganism. I have known that that's been my spiritual path for a real long time, but I just in the past couple of years found my temple and everything, so I didn't know much about the ceremonies. It wasn't necessarily a clash of religion, but I guess with her upbringing, she felt shunned by all religious groups when she was growing up. And in her context, she grew up in a very small, conservative, heavily Christian town in the state that we live in. And so she never kind of believed that same system, so she always felt shunned by those groups. So I didn't realize that asking her to do this small little ritual that I didn't think was that big of a deal. I mean, it wasn't like she had to go through this whole thing. She was just like, we would have to find either my priest or one of the assistant priests at the wedding and like do a little like quick sprinkle of holy water, a quick little thing on her, and then she would be fine, and that would be done and said and over with. Like, she didn't have to say anything, she didn't have to do any extra steps. It was just like, okay, you're here, hi, welcome, da da da, turn around, da da da, okay, welcome to the wedding. And she, and I didn't know how uncomfortable she was with all of this until 2 days after the fact, when I was actually on my honeymoon. My dad texted me the morning on my honeymoon to tell me all of this. I mean, thankfully, I was still riding the whole just married high, so it dampened my mood for like an hour or maybe, but quickly resolved. But I mean, just like, it seemed, my relationship with him since has seemed really strained, which makes me really sad, because my dad and I, at least in my adult life, have been close. Like, my dad and mom were divorced, and he's the one that stayed living in the same state as I live in. And he's the one that helped me a lot with taking me and my daughter back in after my first divorce happened, after my first marriage ended. And so it's just like, it hurts. Right. It hurts that something that I had no clue of and no prior context over is something that is wrecking the relationships that I have with him.
So what do you think could have gone differently? What do you wish had gone differently?
The problem is, I don't know. And like, when I got back from my honeymoon, I was in a really bad headspace about it still, and I waffled back and forth a lot about if this was the right spiritual path for me to have, and if this felt as constrictive as other religions have felt to me in the past. I mean, my first husband was extremely Catholic, and part of the reason that we got married the first time was because of his family not wanting a child born out of wedlock, because I was pregnant at the time. And I didn't want my religion and my faith and belief system to be as negative as everything else always came across to me. So I kind of grappled with that for a little while, but finally decided that no, this is something that I believed since I was a kid, and since before I even knew what religion really truly was. So it still feels like true to me. And I mean, like, I guess the situation, it's difficult, and I hate that it happened, but it was kind of unavoidable. I'm not mad at myself for how I took it, because I didn't like attack him or her over it. Like, in fact, I cried that night after I talked to my dad, because I wanted his girlfriend to be there. Like, he and his girlfriend have been together for just about 4 years now, and she's a great person. I love seeing her at holidays. She offers such a fresh perspective that just my other side of the family totally doesn't have. And like, I appreciate talking to her. I appreciate being around her. So it wasn't like this thing where I was super angry and trying to push them out of my life. So I guess I just wish that my dad could see my side of things, of wanting to express my faith in a way that doesn't hurt anybody.
Right.
Because, I mean, I don't want my faith to hurt anybody, and like I said, that's why I have the belief system that I do, because it always seems like the most benign.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it may feel benign to you, but those who are members of very traditional religions, specifically monotheistic religions, will be seeing that as not so benign.
Yeah, and that's valid, and that's a fair argument, and it's a concept that I know I'm still fully kind of grasping, because it's just like, ever since I first learned about it, it's always felt so welcoming and differential to me that I guess sometimes it's hard for me to see the opposite side. Like, I can definitely take a step back, especially now after everything has happened, and see the opposite side of things,
Right.
where not everybody feels comfortable. And that's why, like, I don't, and even before all of this happened, I've never, like, tried to force anybody to have the exact same belief system as me.
Right.
And, like, I guess that was another thing that kind of shook me a little bit about the whole situation, because I've never gone into her home and been like, this is why you have to go to my temple, this is why you have to believe my way. Like, I think that's super scummy.
Well, pagans aren't evangelical.
Oh, yeah.
That's the rub. Most monotheists are evangelical. Doesn't actually matter which brand of monotheist you are. If you're Jewish, if you're Muslim, if you're Mormon, Christian, Catholic, doesn't matter. These are all, monotheism is evangelicism, because if there's only one of something, then everybody ought to know what that one thing is. And any other one thing that could be a thing is a threat. And it's interesting. There's a little bit of crossover here between you and the last caller because of religion. And, it sounds like you really did your best to walk respectfully in that to speak respectfully in that conversation with your dad. I want to highlight this from Wormboy in the chat. Wormboy says to you, I feel your dad's communication could have been better because it seems you were respectful of his girlfriend, but the timing of it all seemed off. I think that, there were some external factors at play, and also, even if those external factors had not been at play, anytime a difference of religious perspective comes up when you're dealing with someone who is devoutly monotheistic, it's going to be problems.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just like, and that was the whole other side of things, is she has never presented as being, like, super Christian. And again, like, not like I'm against people that believe in monotheistic religions. I mean, my best friend and my maid of honor she converted to Judaism pretty recently, and she stepped up and helped me try to make this whole thing as pagan as possible. Like, I respect every belief system until they start pretty much condemning people and making people feel shitty. And that's kind of why I felt so bad. I mean, like I said, it took me at least a week after everything happened to fully feel okay, I guess, in still keeping the same faith that I had, because it was really hard, because I got back on that spectrum of grappling with my faith that I haven't been in for a really long time, because, like I said, I've known that this was my faith I'm 27 now, so just about 19 years.
Right.
And like, like I said, she never, like, came across as somebody who was heavily Christian. She doesn't have, like, a million crosses in her house. She never, like, really spoke to anything like that. Christmas and holidays that would typically have religious connotations were always very secular for her, and she would always just, like, enjoy the family aspect rather than any religious aspect. Like,
right.
that's the type of person that she is, which, like I said, that's part of the reason why I felt, when I originally heard what would have to happen, that's part of the reason why I felt like, oh, this is going to be an okay thing, because she never really has shown preference for anything, and I didn't know about her past. So I thought that it was going to be all right. And I mean, I have seen her since then, and thankfully I could tell that it was a little bit awkward, but she talked to me like normal. She was polite. We kind of, like, spoke offhandedly, joked a little bit. I didn't mention what had happened at my wedding. We were actually, last time we met up was for my youngest sister's bridal shower, because she's getting married in September. But yeah, and it was just, I could tell that it was still some tension and a little bit awkward, but it felt much better to talk to her in that setting than I think it would have had I tried speaking to her the week following. It's just, while the relationship with her, I think, might have a chance to be fixed. And even though my dad hasn't necessarily shown any signs since then and since the week after of being viciously angry, my anxiety kind of clung on to everything that was happening and made it hard for me to believe that he's fully over it. So like when I do have conversations with him, it's usually very rare, like 1 or 2 little text conversations a week. But they're very short, and I'm always very nervous about what I'm going to say, just because I don't want to like say the wrong thing and spur the wrong thing up.
Right. Well, I would say the same thing to you I said to the last caller, that there's no shame or dishonesty in avoiding certain topics with certain people if it's going to create a rub, if it's ultimately better for your relationship to avoid talking politics or religion. I mean, you seem like a really open-minded person. It takes a really open-minded person to become pagan. So you're going to be much more open-minded than a monotheist. It's not to say that you're smarter than, like, I'm not saying monotheists are not intelligent or something. Like, there's brilliant monotheists.
Right, exactly,
But the point is that a monotheist is the opposite of open-minded. It's not an open-minded belief system because they believe that there's one thing, and it's no judgment. I'm not trying to judge anybody that may be here as a monotheist. Anybody listening to this ought to agree with what I'm saying because it's true. It's not saying that people are dumb, but monotheism is not open-minded philosophically. It's the opposite philosophy. It's the philosophy of this is the truth and let's go spread it everywhere. It doesn't matter which brand of monotheism you subscribe to. Again, whether it's Judaism, Muslim, Catholicism, Christianity, Mormonism, and there's others as well. They're all different. And so I would say to you, maybe consider the places where it's safe to talk about those things, the relationships that you feel can withstand that kind of nuanced conversation, and those that can't, and maybe your dad and his girlfriend can't. And I'm really sorry to hear you had that rub on your wedding. I mean, that's rough to hear, but I do get the vibe that there's hope for, just pressing forward and don't stop trying, keep applying yourself in that relationship. And maybe there's some words in order. If there's still a rub, maybe there's some words in order that could heal and bring you guys through that a little quicker. So I don't know what those would be, but maybe there's a conversation where you can be like, look, like, I didn't mean any offense. I love you guys. Like, I hope you don't judge me. I don't judge you. I respect you guys. I don't claim that I've got all the answers here. That's not like why I think differently than you. Maybe some words like these might help heal.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think at this point, I want this to happen. Like, I have this whole timeline set up in my head because, like I said, my youngest sister is getting married in September of this year. And so I have this timeline set up in my head of I want to have that conversation at some point before her wedding, because just like me, my sister has a strong relationship with my dad. Our middle sister, not so much, and she's going to be at the wedding, but she's largely unaffected. But me and my youngest sister have much stronger relationships with my dad, and by extension, his girlfriend. Like, I think my youngest sister probably even has a stronger relationship with his girlfriend than I do, because she has freedom of her schedule where she can see them more and do things with them more.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to cause any tension or awkwardness at her wedding that is not needed. Because, I don't really speak to my middle sister anymore, but my youngest sister and she was one of my bridesmaids. She and I are pretty close, and I love her, and I want to see her be super happy without any risk on her special day. So I kind of want to have this conversation with my dad and his girlfriend with enough time that if there is going to be an explosion, then it has time to fizzle out and calm itself down before I have to see them head on that day.
Right.
And
Right.
I mean, like, and with them, I feel like it's, like you said, I feel like it's totally doable. I mean, not to totally derail that side of the conversation, but like I feel like a good closing point for that, if that's okay. I just, going off on kind of the same thing, another thing that kind of happened after my wedding, still with my family and still a little bit tied to my faith and my belief system and actually my mental health as well, is, rather than my dad, my mom.
Right.
And so, like, my mom lived, so we lived kind of on the West Coast, and my mom was kind of in the Midwest.
Easy. Sorry, I said easy cheesy. Easy cheesy is never here. No locations, please. No locations, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's why I tried to be broad. I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to, like, specify. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was nervous when you said that you were gonna go more detail. Sorry,
yeah, no, I almost said states, but that's why I just kind of went broad, and my apologies.
Right.
But, yeah, so she came to the state we are in, a couple thousand miles.
Right.
For my wedding, and then she was staying through the month because at the end of this month, at the end of May, in just a few days, is my youngest sister's 21st birthday, so she and my grandma are taking her to Vegas for that.
Okay. Well.
Nothing to do with us in our state or anything. Just that's just where they happen to be taking her.
Right.
So.
Well, I'm really glad to hear a good update from you on all of this, and I'm wondering what else there is that would make this a good call. I mean, I'm piecing together. I'm taking notes here, and I'm trying to weave together the pieces. What would make this a good follow-up call?
I mean, I guess the good follow-up call just from this point would be to, like I said, this is mainly, like, faith-based, a lot of this. And I mean, like, even just speaking with you for the first part concerning my dad, that has made me feel a little better on that. It's just, like, I guess if I can just, like, kind of, because, like, that was a big thing that happened at the very beginning of the month with my dad, but then the thing that's going on really now for me is with my mom and a lot of my belief system and a lot of how I stray from her.
Mm-hmm.
So just, like, if I could have just a little bit of support and maybe some pointers on that part, that might be what makes this helpful for me most of all.
Pointers on making amends with your dad?
The situation with my mom that I just kind of touched on briefly a second ago.
Okay. Which specific element of your mom are you looking for feedback on? I apologize.
Oh no, you're fine. I think I got cut off a little bit, but I understand shorter calls. I understand you have a big queue lined up. But, like, kind of going based off of my faith system and everything, and like I said, my mental health a little bit too, like, my faith system has been helping me through my mental health and improving things, but I still have had a lot of anxiety being around her because she sees me very differently. And she's somebody that isn't religious, but has always viewed my views as poor and different and has never been as open as my dad has been up until this point. And lately, like, she takes my mental health and my faith and everything, and when I try to talk to her about it, she acts like it's stupid and it's dumb. She would even consider herself an atheist. Like, she doesn't even consider herself very religious at all. But she just kind of takes everything that I believe in and everything that I say and everything that I'm working towards, spirituality-based, faith-based, or otherwise, and just kind of curb stomps it.
It doesn't sound like a very considerate response.
No, it's not a very positive response. And I mean, like, it got to the point where, I mean, this past Saturday, other than it being my sister's bridal shower, I was also supposed to go to my monthly meeting at my temple. And her being here, she kind of overrode everything and was just like, yeah, no, we're too busy, you can't go. Because, like, normally they would watch my daughter for me, if not my grandparents who live here all the time, or my aunt who also lives here all the time, my brother and sister. One of them would usually watch my daughter so that me and my now husband could go. And I was unable to because my mom pretty much stopped everything in its tracks and was just like, no, how dare you even ask? How dare you even try? You don't need to do this. This is dumb. This is weird. This is stupid. This doesn't make any sense. Like, and I've tried explaining to her in the past how, like, my faith system and my belief system impacts my mental health for the better. And how being part of that community, when I felt like particularly she was so difficult to me while I was growing up, it feels like that community is like another family for me and another place for me to go where I feel accepted and cared for. And she shoots that down even more. She thinks that the only family that I need to have is her and mainly her side of the family. She doesn't even want me talking to my dad. She wishes that I didn't talk to my dad anymore. She wishes that I didn't have these open-minded, open conversations and ideas. And
your mom sounds really difficult.
About my life. Oh, yeah. I mean, and then on top of just all the awkwardness with my dad at my wedding, the two of them being in the same space was rough too. I mean, they sat on completely opposite ends of the venue. Like, they mingled with a whole bunch of different people at a whole bunch of different times. And my dad, I could see a lot of times, felt very isolated, not only because of everything else that was going on, of course, but then because my mom is very commandeering with attention. So, like, where my dad would have small conversations with the people from my temple, it's like my mom put up this barrier and this wall to avoid them completely. Like, she didn't even want to say hi, didn't want to compliment them on the ceremony, didn't want to acknowledge that they existed at all. When, like, they were a huge part of the reason why I got to have my day be what I was hoping for.
Yeah, your mom doesn't sound like a very considerate person. She sounds like she has a lot of expectations for everyone. Sounds like, I mean, it's kind of strange because most people who, I mean, a lot of time, I mean, it's why they call atheists free thinkers. It's more often than not that atheists are the most open-minded people.
Exactly.
And it's strange to hear an account of someone who's like, like, not even open to your very open-minded religious perspective. And so, like, it makes me wonder, I've never met your mom. All I know is what you're telling me. But, I mean, it sounds like someone who has a lot of expectations. And that sounds like it wouldn't surprise me to learn that she's got expectations and other things we haven't even covered here. It sounds like sounds like your mom may have expectations for everything. And she's very vocal when those expectations aren't met. So my gut would say that you're not just dealing with a religious difference here. You might be dealing with someone that has insecurities of their own, maybe even some mental stuff going on. We don't know, but like, it sounds like you might need some better boundaries with your mom. I don't know what that looks like prescriptively, but I mean, you can't have a relationship if there's disrespect flying around. That's not a relationship.
Exactly. And I mean, like, that's one of the things that, especially after my sister's bridal shower, like, just in this past week or so, I've been working on setting a lot more boundaries because she overstepped a lot that specific day after my dad's girlfriend left. Like, she has never been particularly fond of her. when they started dating, even though at that point they had been divorced for about 5 years by the time that my dad got with her,
Mm-hmm.
his now girlfriend, I mean. And she overstepped so many parent-child boundaries that, I mean, I have multiple different therapists, and I have an eating disorder specialist that I'm speaking with. I have my own personal therapist for just general stuff, and then me and my husband have a couples therapist. And I've discussed the situation with all three of them, and each time I mentioned it, every single one of them was frankly appalled at the things that my mother told me, and then got offended when I set a boundary saying that that made me uncomfortable, and started blowing it out of proportion, saying that she guessed she just couldn't speak to me at all about anything, when I was just trying to say, well, yeah, you can talk to me, but please, A, keep it PG,
Well,
or at least
if you're if you're trying to put boundaries in place, and the person you're trying to lay down boundaries with immediately goes to black and white thinking or grandiose thinking, that could be an indicator of some very difficult problems you might be up against. We talk a lot about psychopaths here. I don't know. We haven't talked too much about your mom. I don't know if that's what you could be dealing with. I've dealt with a lot of psychopaths. I'm not a psychologist. I can't shrink anyone. But I'm someone who's had to lay down a lot of boundaries with psychopaths in my life, very close relationships. And so when you tell me that you try to lay down boundaries and they go to grandiose black and white thinking, that's a red flag to me, because a boundary should not be met with black and white thinking or grandiose responses. That's a signal, that's an indicator of someone that doesn't really care about you. Like, I'm not saying your mom doesn't love you, but your mom might not have the same experience of your relationship that you do. You might need better boundaries. You might need more explicit boundaries with your mom, if that's the case. You might read the book Psychopath Free. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that book, are you? It might help you determine if it's a good book to determine if you're in a relationship with a narcissist. Are you familiar with that book?
So I'm not intimately familiar with it, but it's funny because we actually went to Barnes and Noble earlier today, and I happened to see that on the shelf.
Great book. Very good book. I'm going to put this in the chat for you. There's even a questionnaire in this book of, I think it's 30 questions, and if you answer yes to 21 of them, then you're most likely dealing with a psychopath of some kind. And if you answer yes to 25 of them, the book claims that you're certainly dealing with some kind of psychopath. Very telling book. I'm going to put this in the chat for you. There's also a good audiobook, Psychopath Free. There you go. And then there's another good one that's helpful called Should I Stay or Should I Go by Dr. Ramani Deversala. Psychopath Free, by the way, is by Jackson McKenzie. Should I stay or should I go? I'll send you the Goodreads link. Dr. Ramani Deversala is probably the world's leading thinker and researcher on narcissism specifically. But this book is helpful. Okay. This book is helpful with any kind of psychopathy you might be dealing with. It's specific to narcissism, and it's also specific to breaking up with a narcissist. But I can tell you from personal experience, it has been helpful for me in just dealing with any kind of narcissistic relationship, not even romantic. So for whatever that's worth to you, should I stay or should I go? There's some typos. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to get this in quick.
No, you're fine. It happens.
But you might read those books to determine if you're dealing with someone that you need more explicit boundaries with. I'm really sorry to hear about that. That's never easy to hear. I mean, that's your mom. Your mom's supposed to love you unconditionally, not judge you on conditions.
Exactly. Yeah, pretty much. But no, actually, you mentioned that second book. That one, I think I have been recommended by one of my previous therapists, actually due to my ex-husband. So different reason, but another person in my life that kind of fit those boundaries and fit that parameter.
Right.
So yeah, I'm definitely going to have to finally check that one out because that therapist also recommended me so many books that I just never got to it by the time I had to leave her practice.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's really good to hear from you again, to get a positive update. I'm sorry that the plot has thickened a bit. Feel free to call back again if you're still wrestling with this after you get through these books. These are great books. I've read them personally. And if you do determine that you're dealing with some kind of psychopath, there's actually a community online called by Jackson McKenzie, the author of Psychopath Free. The community is for people who are in relationships with narcissists, people who are raised by narcissists, people who have narcissistic friends or family members. It's the same title as the book. It's just Psychopath Free. If you Google it, you'll find that community. It's like a forum of people who just talk about being in relationships with narcissists, and they swap ideas and encourage each other. So if you do come to that point, that might be a good resource for you, that community. And also our community, the Discord community. There's a lot of people dealing with all kinds of relational stuff in there. So feel free to join our Discord community if you're not there already. People like talking about this stuff.
It's funny, I just hopped in with the last caller. Sorry not to interrupt.
Oh, great. Happy to have you.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, no, I appreciate it. And having this as just a platform, like I said, I love what you do. I think it's great, and I really appreciate the whole community and just you giving people a voice like me, like literally every other caller that calls in should be able to vent their frustrations and just get some support and a little bit of extra love when they need it.
I appreciate that. Thanks for your support. Thanks for using this place. Thanks for calling in and sharing, and hoping for another positive update from you in the Discord or here on the phone. Thanks again for calling.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Take care. All right. Guys, I'm kind of torn on what to do because it's getting late. I think we're going to try to take one more caller. I'm going to open up these lines, and just know that if you call in, we are going to wind down in about 12 minutes. So we are going to take another caller, but if we don't, if it's going to be a long call, we're going to wind it down in about 12 minutes. And if we get cut off, I'll call you back at the top of the next stream. We're going to try doing that at least one time and see how that goes. Lines are opening. Coming right back in 10 seconds. Don't go anywhere. Hi, thanks for calling. Oh, we lost him. Hi, thanks for calling.
Hi, yeah, this will be short, I promise. I know you're winding down.
No problem. Can you turn your speakers down so I can hear you better?
Say again?
Can you turn your speakers down? So we're getting some feedback.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I was listening to you for a second.
No problem.
Yeah, it's off. Can you hear me?
I can hear you great. What you want to talk about?
Well, it is short, but I struggle with severe social anxiety, which kind of bleeds into it splits into two things, but it is short to explain. But essentially, I for many years have been really bad at making friends, and I have lived alone for almost 10 years at this point. My 20s were very isolated for the most part, and it has been very crippling to the point of tears. And I had tried to do things even a couple years ago, go into a bar or go somewhere 30 minutes, try and gain the courage to try to approach people, but I just didn't know how, because I was used to making friends through friends or at parties when people used to invite me places, and at work when I used to work regular jobs. Now I don't. Now I'm kind of going through a freelancing career choice, and work from home. So I tried to find meetup events, but there weren't really much that I was interested in, so it's just been like, I don't know my options, and I feel like before I can even pursue my career after graduating classes, getting my certificates and diploma for it, I need to overcome this first, because not only has it been hard for me to connect with people for my social life, but I'm also I'm scared of that and romance and the works. I've been rejected a lot, and I won't say that it wasn't entirely my fault, but that part of it would have been a long story that I guarantee we don't have time for. But let's just say some of it was my fault, some of it was, it's just, I feel kind of like, I guess you could say, an outcast, and I feel like it's hard for people to understand me, and it's been hard for me to like, if I'm at work, I could connect with the coworkers just fine, but when it's like when I'm out and open and out there, and I've tried social websites, but it seems like all people want to do is just flirt and all that, and I'm not really into that. I just want to like make friends, I want to network. I want to be like, hey, let's hang out, let's be friends, and it's just been incredibly lonely, because I'm in my 30s now, and I guess that's the gist of it.
Yeah, it sounds like you're dealing with some struggle with putting yourself out there. Maybe you feel like you're going to be judged again.
Yeah,
that's hard to overcome. Have you made an effort to overcome the things that you feel you've been judged for in the past?
Yeah.
What kinds of things have you been judged for in the past, and how have you grown past those?
Well, in the past, when it was kind of hard to socially adapt, because at first I have overcome a lot, because I was born with autism, and I had socially struggled a lot back then, but I am very different, and I have developed, thanks to some online friends who have helped me, but even then, for example, a few years ago, there were some things that I was struggling with, but nobody at my old job would tell me. Like, we were in this this little office room with computers, where like back-to-back chairs almost. It was a small room, and sometimes we would just talk, and I would just talk, and I thought I was just sounding like anyone else. I thought I was just talking like anyone else, and then they just got offended by me just sometimes continuing on, but I would ask questions, and sometimes they would say I'm disruptive, but overall I just wanted to try and connect with people, and I do feel I've come some way since then, but that was also my one of my last jobs that I really had that kind of social interaction with, before I moved, and I don't know, it was I'm not really sure what to make of it, or what to make of it now, because there's a few friends I have now that I seem okay with, but like others, they're so busy with I guess we're adults now, and they have children, they have jobs, and we don't get to see each other much, but I just feel that they aren't saying something to me, and I guess I just want more honest, transparent, genuine friends who will actually tell me, even if I'm wrong. And where I live, in my city, there's a lot of people around here that kind of don't do that. It's kind of like, just kind of move on from each other, and people are kind of defensive, and kind of like, you almost got to like a tiptoe around here. It wasn't like when I temporarily moved to the other place. I know we can't say cities or states, but it was much more chill there. People were approachable. You could talk to them. I kind of miss it there, but I had some emotionally abusive roommates. Again, no time to explain that. So I had to move back, here, and it's just like I don't really know how to connect with people here, even though I was raised here. So, I'm just trying to figure out, is there any place I can go to really connect with people without relying on work environments or like school or like I don't know, just a typical environment, because I don't want to come off as that kind of guy that's like, hey, and they're like, why is he talking to me? Like, does he want something else? Does he have an ulterior motive? But it's just like, I guess that's one of the things I'm really scared of more than anything. But I've been rejected a lot, which is, that part bleeds into the why I never tell anybody, like, when I have feelings for like a girl that I like. I don't really say anything anymore, because normally they don't feel that way towards me. And so I guess the theme here from the social anxiety and the fear of rejection is I kind of feel unwanted.
Yeah, well, you might be, if you're on the spectrum, you might be valuing different things than other people. And that might be something you might have to compensate for, or calculate for.
That's true.
Like, if you're on the spectrum, you're going to have more of a desire and a propensity to just speak what's on your mind unfiltered. You're gonna piss people off if you say exactly what you think, because some people don't have that. Some people who are on the spectrum, their brains work very quickly. They're quick thinkers. They're deep thinkers. They're analytical in a way that neurotypical people are not, typically. And so there will be always a chance and a possibility and a propensity to for saying something brutally honestly that someone else can't handle. And so sounds like you might be pushing people away, not intentionally. I mean, I totally get what you're saying. You just want to be real. You'd rather someone tell you, you said it to us, you'd rather someone be straight up honest with you, even if it's a criticism, because that's what's important to you in a relationship. And it might take you some time, and it sounds like you've already spent a lot of time, so you might not like hearing that, but it sounds like you might need some time to seek out some relationships that value the same things you value. Doesn't sound like you've got a lot of people around you that value that level of honesty, that level of depth in conversation. People tend to want to talk about really simple things like sports and TV shows and the news and the weather. And if you're on the spectrum, none of that stuff matters to you, at least nearly as much as other people. And you definitely don't want to talk about the weather, No. So I hear that in what you're saying. It sounds like you've just not had. It sounds like maybe you've been so hungry for relationship that you've been kind of just going after it, like wherever you meet people. And it might not be so simple for you. You might actually need to learn to dial. I mean, from what I'm hearing, maybe consider when and how and where you're being honest and speaking exactly what's on your mind, and when you kind of curb that a little bit. And then, I don't know exactly where you would meet people that want to have. Meet people in person anyway that want to have conversations like that. Of course, Anonymous Live here, none of us meet in person, but that's what we're trying to do here, is get people talking in this exact same way. Just brutally honest. Tell us what you're going through. We want to hear what people go through. No judgment. And we'll all spitball and have a conversation about it. Of course, like, it's not enough to only have that digitally, but we're hoping to inspire people to seek out communities like this personally on their own in their own towns. It doesn't sound like it's a location thing to me. You implied a couple times that maybe you should, maybe it has the location was relevant. I wouldn't say that's true. I think in any city, in any state, in any part of the world, people are going to tend, neurotypical people are going to tend to not want to hear the brutal, honest truth all the time. People can't handle it a lot of the time because it takes too much thinking. 100% honesty takes too much thinking for some people in some settings, especially coworkers. They're like, look, like, we're here to work. Like I don't know what to do about your personal experience here, or like this, or maybe you suggest something about the work in a way that is too much for that person to take in all at once, and then they just think you're just like this crazy thinker. And I'm not calling you a crazy thinker, but I guess my point is that maybe you've been looking for friends in places where you won't find the kinds of friends you need. And I don't know where those people are, but you might try to seek out some people that are on the spectrum, like you. If you're on the spectrum, it sounds like you're high functioning. It sounds like you're very well spoken.
Yeah.
Sounds like this isn't something that really holds you back professionally or anything. Sounds like this is just like a real, like you're just learning to relate to other people, and you're struggling rather to find people that you relate with. And there might be some support groups for people high functioning autism. You might make some good friends through something like that. You might make friends through. You might consider some kind of chess club or something. I know that sounds like really lame, but chess is a super great game, and there's a lot of people on the spectrum who love chess and are really good at it. And you can make a lot of friends doing things like that. I mean, of course, chess, it's not alone. It's not specific to chess. I'm just thinking of things like where could you meet people that are analytical thinkers, and where could you meet people that, want to have these kinds of relationships that you're looking for. I'm glad that you've got this drive that you're describing. I think it's great that you've got this drive. I think you will find it, and don't give up. Like I think it's a really beautiful thing you want. You just want honesty. You value brutal honesty in relationship. I think that's amazing.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it. I know we're running out of time, but it's okay if I say like one last small thing?
Sure.
Okay, thanks. Well, another thing that I realized the possibility of is, I agree with what you're saying, by the way, and thank you for that insight, but I thought a lot of these friends I made growing up and through jobs, and I've noticed that I am a little bit out there with my interests, and it's not totally uncommon, but a lot of my friends that I currently have, like, are not, I can't connect to them in the ways that I would want to, kind of like you said, and I guess I have been looking in the wrong places, in places that I can't find these people because I don't really have much in common with almost any of them, except for maybe like one person. But online, it seems like I'm okay with talking to people online. Like I'm fine, I'm a podcast host. I've been on the radio. I used to host a radio show. Like I don't have problems with that. It's just, for some reason, it's just in person. I don't know. Maybe something's different, or maybe it's just, like you said, maybe I'm just not vibing with these people like I would, and I'm not in podcast host mode. I'm looking for people I can relate to mode, and when that happens, it's just not there. The chemistry is not there, and maybe they're just thinking, well, maybe that's what they're thinking. Maybe they think, well, we're not really alike and whatever, so maybe I'll talk to someone that's more alike like me. As far as a support group or chess, I don't really like chess, but I like people, so I'll like chess anyway. I'll I'll try that. But overall, thank you for the advice, because actually, I appreciate the compliments, by the way, because I'm actually trying to become a life coach myself. I just took classes, and I'm trying to start my own business to try and help people. Because yes, I'm very passionate about people, and not just connecting to people, but also helping people like you are. And I didn't even know a live stream like this, you could do something like that with this, but it's really cool that you're doing it.
I appreciate the kind words and the support, and I appreciate the conversation. I'm so glad you used this space in this way. You went, it was very efficient the way you laid all that out. I can tell you're very intelligent, and I've thought about this, and I wish you luck in finding the friendships you're after and connecting with people in the way you want to, and I do believe you'll find it. Don't give up, and feel free to call back anytime.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's given me a lot to think about. By the way, been a long-time fan. Love the Kool-Aid video.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the support. Take care of yourself.
Thanks, man.
Bye. All right, guys. Wonderful stream. Look at that. We got to 3 callers in 2 hours. That's amazing. That gives me hope for slightly shorter streams here. Of course, we're still feeling it out. But thank you guys for being here, for these callers, and being here with me. I always enjoy these. This is my favorite project right now. Huge shout out to our mods. Tonight we had Deanna Krebs, Jake Cooper, Offcore. Who else was here? I'm looking for blue names. Looks like it's the three of you guys. You guys are champions. Thank you so much for always keeping the chat clean and on topic. And thanks to all the others in the chat for understanding the need for the mods and why we try to keep things on topic for the callers. The callers do tend to use this chat as the things that you post, that the callers have found the chat to be a huge resource after the calls. So hope you understand the need for doing that. I'm just so grateful that you guys are here each time, and looking forward to next time. We'll be here on Sunday at 9 p.m. Central. And I will see you guys then. Have a great night. Take care.